Hey everyone, did you know that over 90% of you watching right now haven't hit that subscribe button yet? If you're enjoying our stories about real-life gangsters, take just a second to subscribe. It's free, and it really helps us keep bringing you more true gangster tales every day. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into another story from the world of the mob.
The first thing everyone remembered about William Bentvena was his laugh. It wasn't loud, it was alive. The kind that filled a room like warm light, the kind that made people want to lean in closer, even if they weren't sure why. He could be standing in a crowd of 20 men, all wearing the same gray suits, and you'd still know which one he was. Not because of the clothes or the shoes, but because of that sound, the quick, effortless laughter of a man who seemed to know something everyone else had missed. He'd been gone for years before anyone noticed he was back. Brooklyn had a way of doing that, forgetting you until you walked into a bar one night, and suddenly every old story you ever lived through came crawling out of the walls. That night, it was the Linden Lounge, a narrow joint off Flatlands Avenue, where the jukebox still played Sinatra and the bartender didn't ask questions unless you looked like you wanted to lie. The air smelled of beer and aftershave, the light dim enough to make the cheap would look like mahogany. William pushed through the door around midnight, coat collar turned up, that half-smile already in place. The years had rounded his edges, a little softer face, slower step, but the charm was untouched. He stopped near the bar, let his eyes adjust, and smiled at the bartender. "Hey, Benny," he said. "Place looks the same." Benny froze for half a heartbeat, then grinned wide. "Well, I'll be damned. Look who the city coughed up." "You miss me, like a toothache," Benny said, pouring him a drink anyway. William laughed, that same old sound, and the bar seemed to exhale. He took a sip, nodded toward the corner booth where a card game was half hidden in shadow. They still cheating with the same deck? Same deck, new faces. "Figures," William said. "Some things don't change." He sat at the bar, drink in hand, watching the room like a man measuring how much of the past still fit him. Two men entered a few minutes later. Clean suits, the quiet swagger that came from never having to prove anything twice. They noticed him immediately, exchanged a look that wasn't quite surprise, wasn't quite welcome. One of them approached. "Billy." William turned, smile widening. "Frankie the Hat. You still breathing?" "Somehow," the man said, half smiling. "Didn't think I'd see you again." "Yeah, I get that a lot." Frankie nodded slowly. "Last I heard, you were running things out of Tampa. Florida was too hot," William said. "Figured I'd come home, see who's still pretending to be civilized." The man laughed, but it was cautious. "You always did have timing. Timing's all I got left." He stayed until closing, talking to ghosts who happened to be alive. The bartender locked up behind him, and William walked down the empty street, hands in his pockets, snow beginning to fall. The city hummed under the quiet, 1,000 stories unfolding at once. It wasn't the same Brooklyn. The cars were newer, the corners sharper, the kids louder. But under it all, the rhythm was unchanged. The pulse of something old and patient, a heartbeat that never stopped, only slowed. He stopped at a streetlight, watching it flick from red to green, the snow spinning in the glow. "Still here," he murmured. "Still running." He smiled at no one in particular, then kept walking. By morning, word had spread, the kind of word that traveled fast without anyone ever admitting they said it. William Bentvena was back in New York. Some said he came home for business. Others said he came back for revenge. A few said he came back because he missed the sound of the city. None of them were right, not completely. He came back because he'd left something unfinished. Later that afternoon, he visited an old neighborhood bakery. The same bell still jingled when you opened the door, the same smell of sugar and coffee clinging to the air. Behind the counter was an older man, gray at the temples, flour on his shirt. "Mr. Bentvena," he said, startled. "I haven't seen you since." "Don't say it," William said gently. "Makes me sound old." The man chuckled nervously. "What brings you back?" "Just wanted a coffee," William said, "and maybe a little peace." The man poured it for him, extra cream like he used to. Peace is expensive these days. William nodded. Always has been. He left a 20 on the counter and stepped back into the street. Across the road, a car idled longer than it needed to. Tinted windows, the kind of car that didn't belong in this part of town. He stared at it for a moment, then smiled, like a man recognizing an old tune. Still playing the same song, he murmured. The light turned red, the car drove off, and William walked the other way. That night, he rented a small apartment near the waterfront. The view was good, long stretch of river, bridges glinting like necklaces under the moonlight. He sat by the window, coat still on, and opened a small leather notebook from his pocket. Names filled the pages, written in neat handwriting, some crossed out, some underlined. He ran a finger down the list, stopping halfway. Next to one name, he wrote a single word, soon. He leaned back in the chair, closed the book, and looked out at the skyline. The city blinked back at him, indifferent and alive. Tomorrow, he whispered, let's see if you still remember me. Outside, the river kept its secrets. The snow turned to mist, and somewhere far below, a train passed. Its low, steady rumble sounding like the world clearing its throat before saying something important. Morning rolled in soft and pale, a gray ribbon of light slipping between the blinds of the waterfront apartment. William Bentvena woke before the alarm, not because he had to, but because he always did. Some habits didn't shake. Rising early, boiling water in a dented kettle, folding the blanket so neatly that strangers might mistake a life for a hotel room. He stood by the window with his coffee and watched the river move like a thought that never ended. On the table lay the little leather notebook. He didn't open it. Not yet. Some days you start with a promise. Others you start with a pause. By 9, he was on the street. Brooklyn had already found its pace. Delivery trucks double-parked like confessions, school kids weaving through grown-up arguments, a woman walking a dog that looked like it had inherited its owner's opinions. William slipped through it all the way a memory slips through a dream, present but not heavy. He took breakfast at a diner on a corner that used to belong to a butcher who always smelled like an apology. The diner had chrome edges and a coffee pot that could strip paint. A waitress with the kind of eyes that only come from raising 3 kids and surviving 2 winters put a menu down and said, "You look like you used to sit in that 3rd booth and argue with the crossword." "Still losing," William said, smiling. "You want the special? Tell me it's still eggs and hope." "On good days," she said, and poured coffee. He liked the wordless orchestra of the place. Forks on plates, low radios, the scrape of a chair that refused to learn manners. He ate slow, looking like a man measuring his steps through a day he had already rehearsed. When he finished, a man in a too-light suit slid into the booth opposite without asking. He had an agent's haircut and a smile that came with a badge even when the badge stayed in the pocket. "Mr. Bentvena," the man said pleasantly. "Welcome back. I've been here since before you were born," William said. "But thank you. Name's Carlin," the man offered like an appetizer. "You and I will be seeing each other around." "I see everyone around," William replied, stirring his coffee like it needed calming. "It's New York. We'd love to keep things friendly," Carlin said. "Friendly is efficient. If you're sticking to commerce that passes the Sunday school test, we won't have reason to." "Shut." "Then you'll be bored," William said lightly. "I sell nostalgia. It's legal." The agent's smile held. "People say you came back to settle something." "People love stories," William said. "Me? I prefer sentences that end." Carlin tapped the tabletop twice, like a drummer ending a song no one else heard. "If you remember anything you forgot to tell us in years past, you know where to find me." "If I forgot it," William said, rising. "There was a reason." He paid at the register with small bills that smelled like other cash registers, left a tip large enough to be remembered, and stepped into the thin sunshine. Carlin didn't follow. He didn't need to. The city did that for him. His second stop was a tailor in Bensonhurst, a man whose tape measure had outlived 3 landlords and 1 empire. "Bentvena!" the tailor exclaimed, half joy, half inventory. You came back taller in the newspapers, but the truths don't lie. You still a 38. 39 when I'm hungry, William said. They spoke of cloth like some men speak of weather in terms of survival. Gray keeps you unremarkable, the tailor said, flipping through bolts. Blue tells the room you came to make peace. Brown is for men who own land. Black is for funerals. What's for men who outlived a rumor? William asked. Gray, the tailor said, without looking up. Always gray. He bought a suit that would make him blend in at a prayer and stand out at a lie. The tailor pinned the cuffs with the speed of a man who measured time by hems, then pressed a small envelope into William's hand as if giving a church wafer. From Marty V, he whispered, said to pass it along when you came in for the second fitting. William slipped the envelope into his inside pocket without opening it. Second fittings were a language, and this sentence ended with a comma. He walked the long way to the old social club that wasn't a club anymore, just an address that remembered where laughter used to sit. The awning now advertised insurance. The doorbell made the same tremble sound it always had. Inside, a man with a face like a polite argument looked up from paperwork. We sell policies, not promises, he said, then did a quick double take. Well, I'll be. How long you in town? Long enough to adjust a few clocks, William said, as if time were a picture frame you could tilt to make it look straight. They spoke without saying names. Code was a habit even when the world didn't need it. When William left, the man said, there's a card game tonight near the pier. Old faces. A few new. They'd like to shake your hand. Hands first, William said. Cards later. He took lunch with Marty V. In a back room behind a florist shop that smelled like apologies and Saturday weddings. Marty wore success the way some men wore grief, close to the bone, rarely mentioned. You don't write, you don't call, Marty said, opening his arms like a stage direction. I sent postcards in the wind, William said. Didn't you get them? You got people spooked, Marty said, dropping the smile. Half the city thinks you came to collect. The other half thinks you came to forgive. Both halves are nervous. Nervous keeps a city polite, William said, examining a spray of lilies as if they could answer for history. You know there's a welcome home thing tonight, Marty said. Small room, respectable faces. A few kids who think history is a jukebox. It'd be good if you showed. Good for who? William asked. For the room, Marty said. Rooms like to feel blessed, even when the priest is retired. William considered the flowers. They're going to ask me why I'm back. And you'll say that I missed the soundtrack, William said softly. Marty watched him the way people watch the ocean for weather. If there's something that needs fixing, you tell me. If it needs fixing, William said, it'll tell everyone. As he stood to leave, Marty tapped the inside pocket of his own jacket. The envelope. I'll open it when I'm dressed for the answer, William said. Afternoon was for errands that weren't errands. A stop by the old candy store where the owner still counted change with an abacus because he trusted beads more than buttons. A quick visit to the church where the candles were always half burned, as if prayers preferred to remain unfinished. A short walk past the schoolyard where kids with fresh elbows and unbreakable voices invented myths about men they'd only overheard. He sat on a park bench and watched a pigeon conduct a delicate negotiation with a French fry. The city contained every kind of ambition. He closed his eyes and listened to the chorus. Buses sighing, a distant jackhammer, a laugh somewhere that reminded him of a different laugh. When he opened his eyes, the bench felt like a witness. Dusk brought clothes with it. The gray suit, the white shirt that wouldn't complain, a tie the color of second chances. He stood in the mirror and saw every version of himself arranged behind the current one. Like thumbnails of a life he politely refused to scroll. He opened the envelope. A single card, heavy stock, no names. Time. A location. A short message. Asterisk family night. Come right. No speeches. Asterisk in the corner. A small mark only the old crowd used to use. A little compass rose. It meant the room would be arranged and the exits remembered. He slipped the card back into the envelope and the envelope back into the inner pocket. where important truths live. Then he left the apartment with the lights off. He preferred to return to rooms as if they'd been waiting in the dark. The place was a banquet hall that pretended to be a restaurant, or maybe the other way around. The carpet had learned to forgive shoes. The bar had more mirrors than a magic trick. In the back room, the family, some by blood, most by choice, turned when he entered, the way night turns when a streetlight decides to join. "Look at this," someone said, clapping him on the shoulder, making a show of casual awe. "Billy's back with a better tailor." "Gray," William said, deadpan. "For men who plan to leave quietly." Laughter, genuine. The ice broke in neat pieces. He moved through the room shaking hands he had once trusted and a few he had learned only to tolerate. A young guy with sharp hair and unspent patience introduced himself too confidently. "I heard a lot about you. Believe half," William said, "and don't guess the rest." They ate politely and lied politely and remembered things with the precision of artists who knew memory was craftsmanship. A toast, brief and respectful, like a weather report. Then the room loosened. Old songs started their old jobs. A woman with eyeliner that meant business asked William why he always looked like he was explaining a secret to time. "I owe time a few explanations," he said. Across the room, Frankie the Hat gave a nod that said sooner. William nodded back in a language that meant later. Midway through the evening, Carlin drifted past the doorway like a shadow that had gotten lost. He wasn't invited. He didn't stay. The room didn't react. Some nights are blessed by ignoring what doesn't know how to ask. "Speech!" someone shouted, because someone always does. He held up a palm, gentle as a doorman. "No speeches," he said. "They said so." He tapped his pocket where the card lived. The room laughed and returned to its orbit. Marty V. slid close without splashing the night. "One thing," he murmured. "There's a crew, new money, soft shoes. They've been using your name to walk through doors. I told them not to. Names are public parks," William said. "People bring their dogs. They're calling tomorrow, asking for a blessing." Marty lifted a shoulder. "I told them blessings cost." William looked toward the band, watched a guitarist tune a truth into place. "Tell them blessings come in person. And if they don't, then they weren't asking," he said. While he let the room own him, let the noise become a kind of safety, let the clink of glasses and soft talk draw a circle around the evening. Close to midnight, he stepped into the hall for air. The corridor smelled of lemon polish and old deals. A young man waited there, uncertain, hat in his hands as if hats still meant something. "You're Mr. Bentvena," the kid said, voice trying not to break. "My uncle said to tell you he's sorry about years ago. He said it wasn't his to say then, but it's his to say now." William studied the kid and saw sincerity held together by fear. He nodded once. "Apologies get better with time." He asked if you'd meet him. The kid rushed on. "Tomorrow, at the place with the jukebox that still takes dimes." "I know it," William said. "Tell your uncle to bring dimes." The kid grinned, relief loud and clumsy, and ran off like a messenger who suddenly believed he'd survived the message. William stood in the quiet hallway and let the future breathe near him for a minute. He could feel old doors creak in their frames, latches loosening. He could feel the river in the distance, how it never hurried, how it never stopped. Back in the room, the last song was the first song ever written. Hope with a drum, patience with a trumpet. He said goodnight the way gentlemen do when they intend to return, without promises, with care. As he buttoned his coat in the vestibule, Frankie the Hat caught up, hands soft on his sleeves. "There's still time," Frankie said softly, without context. "There's always time," William answered. "Right up until there isn't." On the sidewalk, the wind lifted the edge of his collar and set it back down, like a mother. Brooklyn shimmered under sodium lamps and second chances. He walked toward the corner where cabs argued with fate, paused beneath a light that hummed like a tired singer, and took out the notebook at last. He wrote a single line beneath the name he'd marked yesterday. Asterisk, tomorrow, bring quiet, asterisk. Then he closed the book, tucked it away, and smiled to himself as if he told a joke only patience understands. At the curb, a cab slowed but didn't stop. Across the street, a sedan idled with lights off and expectations on. Somewhere behind him, the party found a new song, the kind that keeps certain ghosts from speaking. William lifted his hand, not to hail a ride, but to feel the temperature of the night. It was just cold enough to make a man alert, not so cold as to make him hurry. "All right," he said to the avenue, to the kid with the message, to the city that had learned to love his absence. "Let's see what we finish." The next morning broke clear and cold, the kind of Brooklyn morning that made you think the city was trying to apologize for all its noise. The sky was a pale gray ribbon stretched over the rooftops, and the East River shone like hammered metal. William Bentvena walked with his hands deep in his coat pockets, collar turned up, shoes tapping the rhythm of an old tune only he could hear. The diner from the message was easy to find. It always had been. A corner joint near 63rd Street, with a jukebox that had outlived 3 owners and a coffee pot that hadn't stopped working since Eisenhower. He pushed the door open, and the bell above it gave a tired ring, like it was surprised anyone still came in this early. The waitress looked up from wiping a counter. "Morning," she said, voice half yawn, half habit. "Morning," William said. He gave her a smile and pointed toward the back booth. "Still plays the same songs?" "Depends what you feed it," she said, shrugging. He nodded, slipped a dime from his pocket, and walked to the jukebox. The glass had gone a little cloudy. The titles yellowed, but there it was, asterisk, asterisk, summer wind, asterisk, asterisk, third row, middle slot. He dropped the coin in and let the machine breathe life into the room. Sinatra's voice floated out, soft and confident, like a memory pretending to be music. When he turned around, the man he'd come to see was already there. Joey the kid, though he hadn't been a kid in 20 years, stood near the door, hat in hand, nervous as a sinner in a choir. His face had aged, but the eyes were the same, dark, quick, guilty. "Billy," Joey said, "you look good." William gestured toward the booth. "Better than the coffee, anyway." They sat. The waitress came over, poured 2 cups, and left them alone. For a moment, neither spoke. The jukebox hummed another verse. Joey finally cleared his throat. "I heard you were back. I heard I was gone," William said. Joey gave a thin smile. "You were gone. Long enough that some people started talking like you were history." "History's just gossip with better grammar," William said. Joey laughed softly. "Still the same mouth. Still the same ears," William replied. "You sent that message?" "Yeah," Joey said, eyes flicking to the window. "I figured it was time." "For what?" "For saying sorry." William didn't move. He stirred his coffee slowly, eyes steady on Joey. "You rehearsed that?" Joey swallowed. "Every day." "Why now?" "Because people are asking about you," Joey said. "Because Marty V's got new company. Because the air's changing." William leaned back. "The air always changes. You feel it more when you're guilty." Joey didn't answer. He looked older by the minute, the kind of tired you can't fix with sleep. "You're not mad." "Mad's a waste of time," William said. "I'm curious." "About what?" "Who taught you to forget?" Joey met his gaze, and something in his face cracked. "We thought you were done, Billy. That's all. Word was you weren't coming back. And you needed someone to replace me. It wasn't like that." "It's always like that," William said softly. "People fill empty rooms. You just forgot I keep spare keys." Joey dropped his eyes. "I never meant harm." William nodded slowly. "You never have to mean it for it to count." The jukebox clicked and switched songs. The moment shifted with it. William finished his coffee, slid a few bills across the table, and stood. "Tell Marty I'll see him soon." Joey blinked. "You sure that's smart?" "I stopped being smart a long time ago," William said. "Now I just do what makes sense." He stepped outside, the cold biting through his coat. Behind him, the diner door jingled shut. He didn't look back. Across the street, the black sedan from the night before sat half-hidden behind a delivery truck. William saw the glint of a camera lens in the sunlight and smiled faintly. He walked right up to the car, knocked on the window, and waited. The glass rolled down an inch. Agent Carlin's face appeared, unbothered. "You're an early riser." "So are you," William said. "I'd offer coffee, but you look like a man who drinks warnings." Carlin smirked. "That your friend back there?" "Everyone's my friend," William said. "It's the city's rule." "You should be careful who remembers you," Carlin said. "Some of your friends have short memories and long records." William leaned on the car door, voice calm. "You think if you stare long enough, I'll turn into the story you want?" "I don't need to," Carlin said. "The story's writing itself." William smiled, genuine this time. "Yeah? Then do me a favor. Spell the ending right." He stepped back and tapped the roof twice, a small, mocking salute, before walking off toward the pier. By noon, he was sitting in a park overlooking the water, feeding crumbs to pigeons that didn't need them. The wind off the river smelled like rust and salt, and the sky was full of seagulls pretending to be elegant. He took out his notebook and flipped to a new page. He wrote 3 names.
Marty Joey.
Carlin, then drew a small circle connecting them. Around the circle, he wrote one word, movement. He stared at it for a long time, then closed the book. The phone in his pocket buzzed once. A text, no name attached, asterisk, tonight.
Doc 47.
Bring quiet, asterisk. He sighed. Always docks, he murmured. Nobody ever wants to meet at a bakery. He slipped the phone away, stood, and brushed off his coat. That evening, he arrived at Dock 47 just before sunset. The air was heavy, the kind that carried the smell of oil and iron. The gulls had gone quiet, and the water slapped against the pylons in a slow, steady rhythm. Marty V. stood there, wearing a dark coat and the expression of a man who'd stopped trusting luck. 2 other men waited behind him, new faces, young and too confident. "Billy," Marty said, "appreciate you coming." "I was promised quiet," William said. Marty smiled, but his eyes didn't. "You always did like drama. Dramas for people who don't have timing," William said. Marty nodded toward the 2 men behind him. "New friends. Business is evolving." William studied them. "You teaching them manners or bad habits?" "They learn what pays," Marty said. "You could too." "I already did," William said. "That's why I'm still standing." For a moment, they just stared at each other, the river whispering in between. Marty sighed. "We're past the old days, Billy. Nobody wants to live in stories anymore." "Then stop pretending you're in one," William said softly. He turned to leave. Marty called after him. "You think you can walk back into the city and start writing endings again?" William looked over his shoulder. "I don't write endings, Marty. I just remind people who started the book." He walked away, the sound of his shoes fading against the dock. Behind him, the wind carried a voice Marty's, almost too quiet to catch. "You should have stayed gone." William smiled faintly without turning around. "And missed the encore?" The river swallowed the words, and the city, patient as ever, kept its secrets for another night. The next day began like it always did for men who didn't sleep enough. Quiet, gray, and full of noise that only lived inside the head. William Bentvena sat on his fire escape with a cup of coffee that had gone cold long before he remembered to drink it. The city was already awake. Delivery trucks growling, dogs barking at nothing, radios murmuring in a dozen languages. He liked that sound. It was proof the world hadn't stopped spinning just because he'd stepped back into it. He pulled the little leather notebook from his coat pocket. The ink on last night's page had bled slightly where a snowflake had melted. Movement. 3 names. He circled the word again, slower this time. "Every circle closes," he murmured to no one. "Some just take the long way." By noon, he was back in motion. The streets near Bay Ridge still remembered him, even if the people pretended not to. He walked past storefronts that used to hide backroom deals and laughter too heavy for daylight. The barber gave him a nod through the glass. The guy at the newsstand just said, "Long time." Neither asked where he'd been. That was Brooklyn, curious but polite enough to live on guesses. At the corner of 86th and Fort Hamilton, he spotted an old friend leaning against a lamppost, hands deep in his pockets, cigarette dangling unlit. Mikey Grasso, once a chauffeur, now a man who knew things for the price of loyalty. "Billy," Mikey said, breaking into a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Heard you been sightseeing. Trying to remember the old neighborhoods," William said. "They built new sins on top of the old ones." Mikey chuckled. "You always had a way with words. Listen, Marty V's been restless. The kids he's got now, they don't understand the rules. They talk loud, move fast. Think the city's theirs 'cause their shoes shine." William smiled. "Shiny shoes slip easier." Mikey lowered his voice. "They're meeting tonight at the old bowling alley on 65th. Private. But your name came up. Lotta guessing about what you want." "I want less noise," William said. "That's not how Brooklyn works anymore." "Then maybe Brooklyn forgot who tuned the piano." Mikey shook his head, smiling despite himself. "You still talk like there's poetry in business." "There is," William said. "It just doesn't rhyme with honesty." That night, he drove to the bowling alley. It had been closed for years. Sign faded, windows papered over. One flickering bulb left to prove it hadn't given up entirely. He parked across the street and waited, engine idling low. Cars came in twos and threes. Men stepped out in overcoats, checking their reflections in darkened glass before knocking on the side door. William watched, patient, counting heartbeats between arrivals. Then came Marty's car, black, polished, guarded by two men with the same expression. Bored professionalism. The door opened. The smell of smoke drifted out. William waited until the last man had gone inside before getting out. His shoes crunched on the old gravel, the sound like footsteps from a different decade. He didn't knock. He walked in. The air inside was thick with dust and old perfume. The lanes were covered, the bar stripped, but a few lamps burned on folding tables. Faces turned, some curious, some tight with unease. Marty V looked up from his chair. "You've got nerve, Billy." William shrugged. "If I didn't, I wouldn't be here. You're not invited." "I didn't come for the food." The younger men at the table shifted uneasily. One of them, barely 30, tried a smirk. "You think you can just walk in and—" William cut him off without raising his voice. "Kid, I've been walking into rooms since before you knew what rooms were." Laughter rippled, short, nervous. Even Marty's mouth twitched. William stepped closer, slow and calm. "You want to talk about me? Do it while I'm listening." Marty leaned back. "All right then, tell us what you're after. You come back, everyone's nervous. You go around talking to ghosts, visiting old corners. You stirring something?" "I'm checking the locks," William said, "making sure the right doors stay shut." "Doors don't scare me," Marty said. "They should," William replied. The silence that followed wasn't friendly. One of the young men muttered something about old-timers. Another said, "You're in the past, pal." William's eyes found him cool and steady. "The past pays the rent on your present." Marty raised a hand before the tension could thicken. "Easy, boys. Billy's not here for a fight. He's here 'cause he's nostalgic." William smiled faintly. "You could say that." Marty gestured toward an empty chair. "Seat. Drink. Tell us what the notebook's for." "Word is, you've been writing again." William sat, folded his hands on the table. "Notes, that's all. I like keeping track of who's still breathing." Marty grinned, but his eyes flicked to the others. "You see what I mean? Every time you talk, it sounds like a threat wrapped in poetry." "Poetry lasts longer than fear," William said. "That's why it scares people." Marty raised his glass. "To poetry, then." They drank. The liquor burned clean. The conversation drifted toward business, shipments, routes, names. William listened, said little. Every word was a piece of a puzzle he hadn't finished yet. Before he left, Marty said, "You could have stayed gone. You had money, son, quiet. Why come back here?" William looked at him for a long moment. "Because quiet gets lonely." And because someone's been writing checks with my name. Marty didn't argue. He just watched as William turned and walked out into the cold. Outside, the air hit him like a slap. The night was windless. The streets empty except for a cat darting between trash cans. He leaned against his car, took out the notebook, and flipped to a new page. He wrote, asterisk, they're already inside the house. Asterisk, then below it. Asterisk, Marty doesn't know which floor. Asterisk. He closed the book and stared down the street, the city lights smearing gold on the wet asphalt. The rhythm of Brooklyn still beat steady, but he could feel it changing tempo, just a little faster, just a little off. He whispered, "You move too quick, you trip." The words turned to mist in the cold air and disappeared. Back home, he found a note slipped under his door. Typed no signature, just a line. Asterisk, you can't fix what you built to break. Asterisk. He read it twice, then smiled. Guess someone's been reading my lines. He left it on the counter, poured himself a drink, and sat by the window again. The skyline looked different tonight, less like a home, more like a test. Somewhere out there, Marty's new kids were making noise. Somewhere else, Carlin was waiting for proof that ghosts could still leave fingerprints. William took a slow sip, then whispered, "Everyone's waiting. That's the problem." He closed the blinds, the city disappearing behind him. Tomorrow, he'd start knocking on doors again. Not to make noise, just to remind Brooklyn that quiet didn't mean peace. The next morning came with the kind of light that made Brooklyn look honest, soft, slow, and full of fog. The city hadn't earned that light, but it took it anyway. William Bentvena stood by his window, coffee in hand, watching the world below his apartment move like it always had. A delivery truck backing into a space too small, a woman yelling goodbyes from a stoop, pigeons declaring themselves the only true landlords of the borough. His phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. One-word text. Park. He didn't need to ask which one. There were certain places you didn't have to name. They already knew who you were. He dressed in gray, like he always did, neutral, polite, invisible, and walked. The fog clung low, wrapping the corners in something almost beautiful. As he passed the bakery, the owner waved him inside. "Mr. Bentvena, try the new rolls." "Not today, Tony," William said with a half smile. "I'm watching my figure." Tony laughed. "You've been watching that thing for 50 years. It still hasn't changed." William waved, kept walking. He liked that people could joke with him again. It meant they'd forgotten just enough to feel brave. When he reached the park, the benches were wet, the trees bare, and there, sitting like he'd been waiting all morning, was Agent Carlin. The man didn't look surprised to see him. "Mr. Bentvena," Carlin said, "you always make the weather look planned." "I like punctual fog," William replied, sitting across from him. "Keeps conversations private." Carlin smiled thinly. "Private's a rare commodity lately, especially for men who don't stay retired. Retirement's for people who finish things," William said. "I'm still editing." Carlin leaned back, gloved hands folded. "You've been busy, visiting people, reopening doors. Makes the bureau nervous when ghosts start knocking." "I've just been walking," William said. "City's smaller when you stay away too long." "Sure," Carlin said. "Let's say walking. You met with Marty V. last night. You know we've got ears everywhere. Then you already know what we said." "Not everything," Carlin said, watching him carefully. "That's why I'm here." William raised an eyebrow. "You want me to fill in your blanks?" "I want to make you an offer." William chuckled softly. "That's usually where bad stories begin." Carlin didn't smile. "There's a new task force coming in from DC. They're looking to clean house. Names, connections, anything that smells old world. Marty's on the list. So are you. But I'm offering you something he won't get. I'm listening. Cooperation. Quiet. You tell us what's shifting, who's moving money, who's pulling strings. In return, we make sure your name stays nostalgic instead of notorious." William looked at the fog curling through the park paths. "You think I'm scared of being forgotten?" "No," Carlin said. "I think you're scared of becoming a headline. They always get the story wrong. For a long moment, neither spoke. A dog barked somewhere beyond the trees. William said finally, "You ever wonder why men like me don't talk to men like you?" Carlin tilted his head. "Enlighten me. Because you think in arrests. We think in years. You make deals for time. We make them for peace." Carlin studied him. "And which one lasts longer?" "Neither," William said. "But peace feels better on the way out." He stood, brushed the rain off his coat. "You'll get your story, agent. You just might not like how it ends." Carlin smiled faintly. "You always were a poet." William walked away through the fog, his footsteps swallowed by the wet grass. That afternoon, he stopped by the old barbershop on 78th, the one that smelled like aftershave and conversation. The barber, Lou, still used the same chair, the same jokes. "Billy," Lou said, scissors midair. "You're making my customers nervous, showing up like a movie star from a forgotten reel." "I missed your charm," William said, sitting. Lou chuckled. "You miss my gossip, you mean? I heard about last night. Marty's new kids. Half of them can't count change, the other half can't count favors. That's a bad mix. Bad math always breaks the bank," William said. Lou leaned closer, whispering, "Word is someone's feeding the feds names. Not old names, new ones. But they're tracing the money to your old routes." William raised an eyebrow. "That so?" "Yep. You better check your ghosts, Billy. They're walking without permission." Later that night, he sat by the window again, lights off, watching the city breathe through the fog. He opened the notebook, turned to a blank page, and wrote, "Asterisk, if the walls are talking, it's because someone taught them my name. Asterisk." He closed it, leaned back, and listened. Somewhere down below, a siren wailed, long and distant. The sound faded into the hum of the streets, into the rhythm he'd known all his life. Then softly, a knock at the door. Not hard, not urgent, just 3 slow taps. William stayed still for a moment, eyes on the dark hallway beyond. Then he stood, walked to the door, and opened it. No one there, just an envelope taped to the frame. Inside, a single playing card, the King of Hearts, and a note, asterisk, next move's yours. Asterisk. He smiled, small and tired. Always is. He set the card on the table beside the notebook, poured himself a drink, and whispered, "All right, then, let's see who's still playing." The next morning came with the kind of light that made Brooklyn look honest, soft, slow, and full of fog. The city hadn't earned that light, but it took it anyway. William Bentvena stood by his window, coffee in hand, watching the world below his apartment move like it always had. A delivery truck backing into a space too small, a woman yelling goodbyes from a stoop, pigeons declaring themselves the only true landlords of the borough. His phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. One-word text. Park. He didn't need to ask which one. There were certain places you didn't have to name. They already knew who you were. He dressed in gray, like he always did, neutral, polite, invisible, and walked. The fog clung low, wrapping the corners in something almost beautiful. As he passed the bakery, the owner waved him inside. "Mr. Bentvena, try the new rolls." "Not today, Tony," William said with a half-smile. "I'm watching my figure." Tony laughed. "You've been watching that thing for 50 years. It still hasn't changed." William waved, kept walking. He liked that people could joke with him again. It meant they'd forgotten just enough to feel brave. When he reached the park, the benches were wet, the trees bare. And there, sitting like he'd been waiting all morning, was Agent Carlin. The man didn't look surprised to see him. "Mr. Bentvena," Carlin said, "you always make the weather look planned." "I like punctual fog," William replied, sitting across from him. "Keeps conversations private." Carlin smiled thinly. "Private's a rare commodity lately, especially for men who don't stay retired." "Retirement's for people who finish things," William said. "I'm still editing." Carlin leaned back, gloved hands folded. "You've been busy, visiting people, reopening doors. Makes the bureau nervous when ghosts start knocking." I've just been walking, William said. City's smaller when you stay away too long. Sure, Carlin said. Let's say walking. You met with Marty V. last night. You know we've got ears everywhere. Then you already know what we said. Not everything, Carlin said, watching him carefully. That's why I'm here. William raised an eyebrow. You want me to fill in your blanks? I want to make you an offer. William chuckled softly. That's usually where bad stories begin. Carlin didn't smile. There's a new task force coming in from DC. They're looking to clean house. Names, connections, anything that smells old world. Marty's on the list. So are you. But I'm offering you something he won't get.
I'm listening.
Cooperation. Quiet. You tell us what's shifting, who's moving money, who's pulling strings. In return, we make sure your name stays nostalgic instead of notorious. William looked at the fog curling through the park paths. You think I'm scared of being forgotten? No, Carlin said. I think you're scared of becoming a headline. They always get the story wrong. For a long moment, neither spoke. A dog barked somewhere beyond the trees. William said finally, You ever wonder why men like me don't talk to men like you? Carlin tilted his head. Enlighten me. Because you think in arrests. We think in years. You make deals for time. We make them for peace. Carlin studied him. And which one lasts longer? Neither, William said. But peace feels better on the way out. He stood, brushed the rain off his coat. You'll get your story, agent. You just might not like how it ends. Carlin smiled faintly. You always were a poet. William walked away through the fog, his footsteps swallowed by the wet grass. That afternoon, he stopped by the old barbershop on 78th, the one that smelled like aftershave and conversation. The barber, Lou, still used the same chair, the same jokes. Billy, Lou said, scissors midair. You're making my customers nervous, showing up like a movie star from a forgotten reel. I missed your charm, William said, sitting. Lou chuckled. You miss my gossip, you mean? I heard about last night. Marty's new kids. Half of them can't count change, the other half can't count favors. That's a bad mix. Bad math always breaks the bank, William said. Lou leaned closer, whispering, Word is someone's feeding the feds names. Not old names, new ones. But they're tracing the money to your old routes. William raised an eyebrow. That's so? Yep. You better check your ghosts, Billy. They're walking without permission. Later that night, he sat by the window again, lights off, watching the city breathe through the fog. He opened the notebook, turned to a blank page, and wrote, Asterisk, if the walls are talking, it's because someone taught them my name. Asterisk. He closed it, leaned back, and listened. Somewhere down below, a siren wailed, long and distant. The sound faded into the hum of the streets, into the rhythm he'd known all his life. Then softly, a knock at the door. Not hard, not urgent, just 3 slow taps. William stayed still for a moment, eyes on the dark hallway beyond. Then he stood, walked to the door, and opened it. No one there, just an envelope taped to the frame. Inside, a single playing card, the King of Hearts, and a note. Asterisk, next move's yours. Asterisk. He smiled, small and tired. Always is. He set the card on the table beside the notebook, poured himself a drink, and whispered, All right, then, let's see who's still playing. The rain came hard that night, the kind that made the city sound like it was whispering to itself. Every gutter gurgled secrets. Every car tire hissed a confession. From his window, William Bentvena watched the streetlights blur under the downpour. It was the kind of night made for decisions, quiet, heavy, and honest. The card lay on the table beside his drink. King of Hearts. It stared back at him like an inside joke only the city got. He turned it once, twice, then slid it into his notebook, between the pages marked with names and half-answers. By morning, he had a plan. Not written, not spoken, just formed. Like steam curling up from his coffee, it existed only in motion. He started with the small things.